presidency is not taking it lightly with Obasanjo. There is no amount of bullet they have not thrown back at Obasanjo. Why? Because Obasanjo came out and ordered President Bola Ahmed Tinubu to sack, as a matter of urgency, the INEC chairman, Professor Mahmoud Yakubu. The presidency has not rested since Obasanjo gave this order. They have said that Obasanjo lacks the capacity, lacks the credibility, lacks the right, lacks what it takes to give such an order, owing to the fact that during his time as president, he did far worse than we are seeing now.
The presidency has issued a strong rebuke to former President Olusegun Obasanjo following his recent comments at the Chinua Achebe Leadership Forum at Yale University, where he said that Nigeria has become a failed state due to the policies of former President Muhammadu Buhari and President Bola Tinubu. Obasanjo stated clearly that Tinubu and Buhari led Nigeria into a state of chaos, insecurity, and underdevelopment. In a statement by Special Advisor Bayo Ononuga, the presidency criticized Obasanjo for blaming current leaders for Nigeria's challenges, asserting that a man with his record should not lecture others on leadership. It is hypocrisy writ large when a man who presided over the worst election in Nigeria demands the sack of the leadership of the Independent National Electoral Commission, the statement stated. The only positive, it was claimed, of the Obasanjo area was fiscal and monetary policy management, buoyed by a consistent rise in crude oil prices throughout his 8-year tenure. The current economic crisis, the All Progressive Congress administrations have been battling since 2015, they claim, is the product of the poor choices in economic management made by Obasanjo and the two successors from his party. Joining us now on the morning show from the coast city of Enugu is Chief Dan Ulasi, former PDP chairman, Anambra State. Chief Ulasi, good morning. Good to have you on the program.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Well, Chief, what do you think of this tango between President Obasanjo and President Tinubu's spokespersons? Mr. Ononuga was claiming, matter-of-factly, that President Obasanjo should keep quiet because he doesn't have the moral high ground to complain about the performance of the Tinubu administration. Do you agree with him?
Well, constitutionally speaking, both Ononuga and Obasanjo have a right to free speech. It is for you and I to, dissect what they have said and, see where the truth is coming from, if any. But fundamentally, I have to say that democracy in itself succeeds on a heavy doses of civility. And in both Obasanjo's comment and the reply by the presidency, I didn't see any civility in it, unfortunately. Leadership should have some form of strategic discipline and not self-indulgent. But what I saw, especially on the presidential reply, is a toxic stash and burn politics, which could be dangerous. And sometimes it might be stoking paranoia and hatred. And once hatred comes into political discussion, then you have left the main point. Obasanjo made fundamental points at Yale University, Chinua Achebe's anniversary. Some of them were factual. There are things you cannot deny. It depends on the way he said it and the way the perceptor is looking at what he said. I would have expected the presidency to reply him point by point by trying to dissuade, some of the items he mentioned. He cannot conclusively say that this current regime is a failure. I will accept that the 8 years of Muhammadu Buhari was a tragedy for this country. I've said that severally. And anybody who inherited Buhari will not have performed any magic. The only difference will be your methodology, because the whole system was flawed, collapsed as it were. So the only difference, even if Atiku Abubakar or Peter Obi inherited Buhari, they will be passing through this problem. The differential will be the methodology with which they want to apply solutions to. It's not just waking up and say you remove subsidy, you float the naira, you do this without concomitant solutions attached to it. So I would have expected the presidency to be more civil in their reaction. or entirely even ignore him. You know, Obasanjo has been somebody who criticizes even Yaradua that he midwifed. He also criticized Yaradua and wrote letters, but in this one at least he's making a comment, as it were. So I'll expect Obasanjo to know that he's a senior statesman, very senior statesman, from military head of state to civilian president. You have a right to make commentary, but not a commentary that even runs down your country. Because once you run down the leadership of a country, you're running down your country. He's not the only perfect person. The tendency people want to see or believe is that he always say that, criticizes others, believing that he was the only one that did some good work. Every other president in one form, even the short 2.5 years or so of Yaradua, he did some good work. So I believe that these toxic replies and commentaries should not apply, not in the situation we find ourselves.
Thank you for using the term toxic with regards to, the replies and the conversation. You also used the word civility. Can you please unpack these for us, especially when you're talking about the toxic rhetoric that we've been hearing? What do you think is at the foundation of this? Because it seems to be escalating. Why do you think that the communication and the back and forth on issues that should just be academic debates has somehow descended into a world of, toxic abuse and insults? What do you think is at the core of this?
Well, if you remember, between 1998 or 1990, 2007, Tinubu was governor of Lagos State, and Obasanjo was president of Nigeria, PDP. And it was, short of saying it was a civil war, there was nothing the PDP government at that level didn't do to take Lagos State from Tinubu, and he resisted it. So I can see a carryover of what happened some 20-something years ago into the present, dispensation. Because the commentaries, like I said, was toxic, and you don't see any, even if they are not friends, there should be some recognition that you haven't been president, haven't done your best. 1 year plus is not enough time to have a fairly critical analysis of where Buhari, I'm not defending him, I'm a PDP person. I'm not enjoying that because the country is in such a bad situation that if two top leaders, worsen the situation we find ourselves by toxic use of language, then we're not helping the common people they're supposed to be serving. That's actually what I mean. The reply of Ononuga, was simply put, it's unfortunate. That's the way I would describe it, because it was so personal, going to his personal life, and it wasn't doing anything. Because if you checked of all the presidents in this country, you probably would regard Obasanjo as the best. All the loans we had through the military, he was the one who paid it off and got the European Union to forgive us the rest of our debt. He stabilized the polity. He brought in ICPC. He brought in EFCC. Somebody doing that will not be a corrupt mind. He has an intention to try to sanitize the political process and governance in Nigeria. And Tinubu also did his best, because subsequent people who succeeded in Lagos State also transformed Lagos. That means he also had a vision. I'd have expected Obasanjo, to be a little, civil in his commentaries. There are comments you make, and people are forced to reply you. You may not like the reply, but they have a right of reply. But my concern is that where Nigeria is today, we don't need such toxic processes from either side.
No, but I mean, Chief, good to see you again. I'm a little taken aback when you call this toxic. Me, I just call this real open season play. People are just having fun. As far as I'm concerned, there's nothing toxic about it, because let's look at the substance of the matter. Obasanjo said what is true. Can you pick out a lie in what Obasanjo said? Things are not going right. There's nothing Obasanjo said that IMF has not said that is happening as we speak today in Nigeria. In fact, if you get Obasanjo's speech, there's not going to be too much difference from the IMF playbook or any foreign media. As regards our elections, yes, our elections are faulty, which we all know about. Even Obasanjo himself conducted 40 elections, which were deemed to be fraudulent. So by Ononuga responding him to that one is 1-1 as far as I'm concerned. There's nothing that they said. The state of the economy is backward and everything. And you say Obasanjo is going to say this on the foreign forum. Everybody in the world knows what goes on in Nigeria. Wasn't it an Austrian newspaper, as President Tinubu won, that carried a story about a baron winning an election in Nigeria? I mean, so everything is in public glare. In moving forward, can't this government decide to work on those things that he has highlighted rather than abusing him? Because these things are the things we should work on. Two erroneous decisions, removing subsidies and floating in naira at the same time. You can see where it's put us. Is there nothing that can be done about it? Because even the IMF has said these decisions are killing Nigerians. That's just it. So, me, I think it's 1-1 as far as I'm concerned, though. Maybe because me, I like it, like they say in local parlance, wawulens. Wawulens. Chief.
My brother, I must tell you that as appears from your comments, this is a very serious matter. A matter in which thousands, if not millions of Nigerians, if they are not dying, they are at the point of death. So we shouldn't be joking with it. Either on Obasanjo's comment or the reply from the presidency. We have given them, the authority to run the affairs of this country with a view to taking care of us. And Obasanjo rightly pointed out, nobody believes that anything is going so beautiful in this country. And like I said, I had already said, and you mentioned it in your comment, nobody. If Ononuga had replied Obasanjo item by item, comparatively speaking, respect to the time he was president, it would have made some common sense and intellectual understanding. But having to go personal, goes away from the topic at discussion. That's why I said it was a little toxic, and in fact, bordering on cancer, political cancer. And once you start doing that, it's a distraction. You don't want people to look into the substances of what it is.
With due respect, let me play devil's advocate.
Unfortunately, just a second.
Okay. Ononuga acknowledged economic growth in the time of Obasanjo. In all of this tirade you said Ononuga wrote, he acknowledged economic successes in the time of Obasanjo. He just talked about the other areas. He acknowledged economic successes. So give it to the man. Playing devil's advocate here.
Can I make a...
Go ahead, sir.
Just a second. When I was in secondary school, that was probably before you were born, my principal used to say, if you're transferring from one college to another secondary school, and you're being given a testimonial, they will say, a brilliant student, this, a good sportsman. But once you see but, everything written above is gone wrong. That means there's something strategically wrong about your person. So looking at Ononuga, he has said he ran a good economy, he did it, but he summarized it, that he was a failure.
Well, Chief.
That's the summary he gave.
Chief.
That Obasanjo was a failure.
Chief,
yes?
Something gives me the impression that you are playing a balancing act by using the expression toxic. You were saying, Ononuga should not have spoken this way, Obasanjo too should not have spoken this way. Have you read that presentation on leadership and state capture by President Obasanjo? That's one question, because it was published by Premium Times, the full text. Now, what
it's right
part?
It's in my phone.
Okay, what part? Well, it's in your phone. Whether you have read it is another question. What is it that Obasanjo said
yes, I read all of it.
In that statement that is toxic? Because he talks about leadership crisis, he talks about corruption, he talks about institutional reform for INEC, he talks about addressing electoral violence. I don't think there was anything original that other Nigerians have not talked about. So why do you think it's toxic?
You forgot to mention the aspect that he said that this government is leading Nigeria into a failed state. That's the summary of what he said.
People have been talking about Nigeria a failing state for over 10 years. No, that's not a new intellectual category.
Why don't you allow me to make a comment? If I say that you are stupid, depending on the tone I use in saying that, you might not be annoyed. Somebody else will tell you, you are very stupid, and you feel angry. If somebody else has said what Obasanjo said to the Tinubu, and many have been saying it, it was irrelevant to them. But for a former head of state, that they had issues, that was why I made the reference to when he was president and this president was governor of Lagos State, there was a carryover of crisis of confidence. And you don't forget that. That is what I see playing out. It may be Obasanjo feels that the young man is doing well and he wants to tell Nigeria that he's not doing well. That is his opinion. He's not going to convince me or yourself or somebody else the way to judge Tinubu's government. Those who had in the past judged how Obasanjo performed. It's not going to change anything. But what I'm saying that for comments like that coming at this point in time and the subsequent reply from the presidency, we don't need them. That's why I'm being fair-minded in my commentary. The Nigerians are dying. And supporting Ononuga or supporting Obasanjo don't help the issue. We should be able to, if we have suggestions how this country can do better, let the person say it out. Not when we have all died and you come telling us the armchair theoretics, this if you had done this. Why didn't you tell us to do it? If you love this country, if you're patriotic, tell us how to do it better. People are dying in this country. People are dying. In every village, in every town, people are dying. And this rhetoric is not what we require at this point in time. That is summary of what I'm saying, honestly. You know?
Okay. So having said that, we all know that former President Obasanjo has always been a very vocal man, whether it's through his written letters or through his spoken word. He's not a man who can be gagged or silenced. So having said that, how do you think this is all going to play out? Because you've already alluded to the fact that, you feel this is bigger than this statement, that it is being driven by animosity, historic animosity between these two gentlemen. So it almost seems like there's a bigger tug of war happening. What is that tug of war, and how do you see all of this concluding? Is this the path to 2027? Do you think the Tinubu administration is concerned about who Obasanjo may be backing on the road to 2027 and how that will play out? What do you think are the dynamics and intricacies around this, and how do you think it will play out?
Thank you very much for this question. I had the singular privilege, and I call it a privilege, of meeting Obasanjo as president not less than 30 times. In fact, at some point in time, he would tell his senior special assistant, Andy Oba, to call me. He's a very argumentative person, very intellectually driven, In fact, sometimes we'll be talking, and his late chief of staff, Major General Abubakar, will come and tell him he has an appointment, and he said, I'm president of Nigeria. This is more important to me, because I'll have the courage to tell him where he's wrong, and he will debate on it. So for those who have not had the privilege of talking with Obasanjo one-on-one, you will not know where he's coming from. He's somebody who positions himself, like I said initially, that he's a perfectionist. He ended the Nigerian Civil War, so to speak, and I believe that, of all his colleagues, civil or military, that he's on a placement, on a graduated ground where nobody else, would have done better. That is his opinion, and I don't quarrel with that. He's right to his opinion. But what I'm saying, no matter what his opinion is, no matter the dimensions of those opinions, I'd have expected the presidency either to ignore him, because if the presidency had ignored him, this one would have died down, or they graduate their discussion on items that are relevant, because not everything he said that is relevant. They would have graduated it and then replied to what they think is important towards the national development. That is the summary of what I'm saying. Whatever their personal problems, everybody in this country knew that 7 years of governorship of Lagos State and presidency of Obasanjo wasn't a bed of roses. Anybody who thinks otherwise is deceiving himself, not anybody else. Okay. So it's a carryover, and I maintain that it's a carryover. Okay, why Chief, it has surfaced this time is what I can't explain. Okay,
Chief Dan Ulasi. Obasanjo said, and I quote, "A number of judges are in the pockets of wealthy politicians and individuals and make judgment not based on the law of the land, but to the highest bidder. This, my learned audience, is one of the most effective strategies of state capture." Obasanjo further says, "There is the case of one governor of a state who still holds the state captive in his pocket 25 years after being governor of that state." Are these things not true? Shouldn't these people check themselves?
Well, Dr. Abati, I said initially that on both sides, there are statements that are factual. But if Obasanjo is talking about the use of law courts, I would need to remind you that a case was at the Aba High Court of Senator Nwabara about his failed senatorial election. Obasanjo as president brought that case from Aba to Abuja, and a judgment was given for him, and the next day he was made Senate president. It happened in this country. You people, every press in this country revealed it. No government in this country can be described as pro civil rule, court processes. They have used the courts when it is convenient for him. And the courts in Nigeria have made themselves available to be used. So it shouldn't be a topic of discussion by anybody blaming one party or the other, because all of them have used the Nigerian judiciary. And it's a good business for judges in this country, unfortunately. So that, in terms of what you have just said, there's nothing new about it.
What about
Everybody has used Nigerian judiciary up to the Supreme Court.
The governor that perpetuated himself in the states for 25 years. What about that one?
For 25 years, I don't understand what you mean.
He said he also talked about a governor that is still controlling the state 25 years after he ran the state.
No, I remember. What I said was that there must be a reason why a civilized state like Lagos, very civilized state, cosmopolitan state, after somebody did his governorship for 7 years, has repeatedly put in those to be governors there. There was a time he had a problem with Fashola or somebody, he nearly removed him not to go do his second term, and that one fought back and was able to finish his second term. And up till now, he's still putting people. So it is for those who live in Lagos to challenge him. It's not for you, if you have a political inkling, you challenge him. I don't think there's any magic in what he's doing. He probably has the resources to do. And it is not comfortable. I don't like it, because it's a one-man show as far as I'm concerned. I mentioned it first, but it is happening. Whether he will turn Nigeria into the same system, I think it will be difficult. But you can see that we're not running democracy. I've always said that we have a civil rule, what I call democratic centralism. Somebody stays somewhere, apologetically using democracy to deceive people and say where have you seen that discussion taking place? It is what the president decides to happen that will happen. It's a carryover of it into the Senate, into the House of Representatives, and they pass the laws.
Chief.
So we have fundamental problems of our own institutions being able to democratize the system itself. Chief. So it is not enough to criticize one person. How about the President of Senate? How about the Speaker of the Federal House? How about the governors? Do you know what the governors do in the various states?
Chief.
They appoint all the commissioners, they appoint the chairman of local government, they appoint even councillors.
Chief.
We have a problem in this country that we don't need to itemize it to one person. That's a fundamental problem about democracy in Nigeria, which we are not practicing. Right from primaries.
I've heard you. Now, we have been discussing what Obasanjo said, what Mr. Ononuga said in his own response. Now, what is your own assessment as a PDP chieftain of the Tinubu administration so far? The Tinubu administration talks about renewed hope. He says it has delivered. A former member of your party, Dr. Donyin Okukwe, says, in fact, Tinubu is the best thing since Jesus Christ. But what do you yourself think, your personal opinion, about the state of the nation and Tinubu's performance so far?
Well, on your program, either the second or the first time I was on your program, I said, anybody that inherited Muhammadu Buhari has to be a magician to do any better within 1 year. And I repeated it even in this interview. So it will be difficult for me to have a justification either way, 1 year plus of what Tinubu is doing. All I would know is that, all I would say, he's getting up on his inauguration day to remove oil subsidy without, concomitant solution to what he did. That is part of the problem we are in. So he created a problem that he cannot solve. The floating of the naira, he created a problem he cannot solve. So it's self-inflicting. These two major problems are, the summary of Nigerian economic woes today. So to that extent, anybody who complains about that is justifiable. But I'm not inside the system. I don't know what they are seeing in the system, but whatever it is they are seeing, they have to understand that Nigerian people are in a terrible mess. If the mess is about people dying, then it's a very serious mess. That's my comment.
When do you think will be the best time to assess, for you to have a definite opinion about the government? After 3 years, or in the fourth year?
If you give me another 6 months, what I normally say is that if somebody takes over, he has a justifiable reason to want to understudy, even though it was the same party, APC, but he wasn't in that government. So you need at least 1 year to be able to, understudy what your predecessors did. And then we look at the footprints you are putting forward. Those footprints, I haven't seen. And I must be honest with you, I'm not an economist. They may have some footprints, but I'm not seeing it. Because the problem in society is mounting by the day, by the week, by the month. So if they are not doing anything that the people can perceive, they better start doing it. Because we're talking about Nigerian life, not APC or PDP.
All right. Now, with regards to some of the communication and responses from the presidency's communications team, it's not just former President Obasanjo who has received this type of response. We know that Atiku Abubakar has now become a regular with regards to back and forth. And now some of the conversation around it, people are saying, is it that this administration is trying to silence all opposition? Is it that this administration is trying to lead us into becoming a one-party state? What's your take on that? Do you think that dissent is being silenced under the Tinubu administration? And do you think we're on a one-way road to becoming a one-party state?
My sister, I can tell you one thing. Nobody in this country can make Nigeria a one-party state. It is not possible. The person can at best be dreaming of that in his bedroom. It is not possible. I would have said all these, I don't know who is now the special advisor to the president on media and publicity. I don't know who is at the moment. Is it Ononuga or Daniel Boali or who? I would have expected, not just they are sitting down in their bedroom and writing something. I would have wanted to see any one of them on television discussing and people asking them questions. It is one thing to write something that nobody asks you any question and it remains there. I would love one of them to come out on television making a policy statement on behalf of the president, and questions will be asked so that we see really where they are coming from. But what I'm saying is that it is difficult at this point in time to really understudy where Buhari is coming from, where he's going to. Because my concern, like I had always said, 8 years of Buhari was a tragedy for Nigeria. There was no governance. It was the carryover of what happened a few months ago about demonstrations on bad governance, on hunger. For the first time in the history of this country, people are demonstrating that they are hungry in the land of plenty. Tinubu will not escape it because it's his party. And he made one unfortunate statement when he was campaigning that he will continue the good works of Buhari from his mouth. So I don't know what the good works of Buhari are. So if, he had to bear the responsibility of the comments people make. But what I'm saying is that such comments coming from very decent, highly placed citizens must be such that will not create more problems that we're trying to solve. Because you can see there are lots of crises, kidnapping, killing, everywhere. So the anger, if people listen to Obasanjo being honest, that sometimes silence is golden. Sometimes the silence is golden. Because I don't know how many people that travel on Nigerian roads anymore. It out of the danger, out of the frustration people feel. So if I say something, people might not take me very serious. But if Obasanjo says that, as a former president, military head of state, and civilian president, it's a very serious matter. We know that the situation is very bad. But we can, also try to tailor it. Sincerely speaking, tailor it to a moderation that will make people not feel frustrated and even, start tending towards violence. That's all I'm saying.
But the truth is, the truth has to be said. Obasanjo has spoken the truth. Real quickly.
It has to be said.
You were speaking about providing solutions. What about Atiku Abubakar that provided solutions and said what he will have done, and the presidential spokesman still abused him? Atiku wrote articles to provide solution, what he will have done. The presidential spokespeople still abused him. What about that one? Because you are talking solution. I've given you somebody that provided solution now. He was still abused.
Well, it's different in from, I used to, when I was in the university, and a friend of mine was looking for a wife. So we asked him a question, how about your girlfriend? He said there's a difference between a wife and a girlfriend. I won't go into that detail. It is easier for somebody who is not in the system at least in the present system, to write up a memo. And if you remember, if there's anybody who will defend Atiku, I should defend him. I was the director of his campaign in Southeast during this last election. And it's a very brilliant, patriotic Nigerian. But the situation we find ourselves is so complicated that it's not a function of statistics anymore. This is the only country where 1 + 1 is not 2. And it has happened, you know. But in recent times, at least Atiku Abubakar has started making comments. And, you know, unfortunately, they are replying him in a way that is also, you know, unfounded and, you know, unpatriotic, as it were, you know, bordering on hate. Because I don't see anything Atiku Abubakar said that is against them. He's talking about the interests of this country, how they have managed the economy, whether well or not. I would have expected, like I said initially, for them to itemize whatever he said and, you know, try to convince us otherwise. That is the civilized way. If you watch even what is happening with Trump in America after his win, he's still moderating. Even the Democrats who are attacking him are also moderating. You don't go to town, you know, running down everybody because you're in government, because tomorrow you'll be out of government and people will treat you the same way. So what I'm saying is that we have fundamental problems of the economy, security, that if I were Tinubu, advising Tinubu, I would have advised him to releasing Nnamdi Kanu. Because the greatest problem now, 2 main problems we have in this country now, security and economy. If he releases Nnamdi Kanu, at least one zone in this country, we have almost 90% peace. It might overflow to other zones in the country. So there are risks we have to start taking now to see how we can make this country any better than it is presently. That's the summary of what I'm saying.
Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Chief.
Thank you, Chief Dan Olasi.
During Obasanjo's time, almost the entire state in the country was being led by PDP. There were cases that Obasanjo fly to court and sit down to make sure that court cases favor his party's candidate in election during his time as president. Now they are firing shot at Obasanjo, letting him know that he lacks the wherewithal, he lacks the credibility to make such a comment, owing to the fact that he is one of the most corrupt presidents in the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Presidency has also noted that Obasanjo owed Nigerians apology for the mess he put place us on. They claim that what we are suffering today was is as a result of some of the lackadaisical decisions that was made by Obasanjo.